Hey there, and welcome into University of Hoops, the show that gives you an inside look at the people making everything happen on your favorite basketball team. Today, we are excited to welcome Wisconsin Herd head video coordinator Keegan Brown of the NBA G League. Keegan, welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of really interesting and fun angles to take with this one, because you're somebody that is in the position that you're in, but didn't necessarily have the conventional path. And for all of the conventional pathers that we have on, I think it's always good to diversify it a little bit and show the people, other ways that you can get there. And with that in mind, we'll go into detail about where you've been and all of your stops. But I know this is your first go around in the G League. I would imagine coming from BYU from D1 there. I would still imagine that it's quite the change of pace, but also going from again like Utah to being in Wisconsin. So talk me through how it's been so far and how the role is treating you.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Wisconsin compared to Utah, it's a little bit colder here. A couple days ago was in the morning. I was on a road trip. Unfortunately, my wife and kids were dealing with negative 14-degree weather, and so that was not fun for them. But other than that, we've been loving Wisconsin. We obviously got here at the end of fall, going to the winter. So looking forward to the spring and summer because that's what everyone tells us is great about this place. And so, in terms of just going from kind of D1 to the G League, it really is a really two different worlds with kind of how with every aspect of kind of how they work with schedule, with player development, with the coaching, with the players. It took little time to adjust and figure out kind of how to adapt to my role and kind of my responsibilities. But now about 3 months in, it's been smooth sailing so far.
What's it like? And it's interesting because in the D1 level, obviously you're taking kids from high school, and now with the way things are, it seems like some of these teams are becoming a little more veteran, which is cool to see. But you're working with guys in that sense at the D1, major D1, high elite competition level. To go from that to the G League, where you do have guys that are like consistent guys and a couple guys that have been around, right? But then you're dealing with rookies and some of which guys that are on two ways and stuff like that, and they're splitting their time. And then you're also dealing with the journeyman type of guys who are just trying to get that shot. So some obvious differences there, but what has that been like for you, especially in the video room where you're playing such an instrumental part in helping guys review what they're doing well, what they're not doing well? What's that been like, just in terms of working with those guys that are sort of, and you mentioned it being in two different worlds where it's pretty the competitiveness at the G League level is crazy because guys are just trying to get a shot.
Yeah. I think one with the G, like you obviously have a unique relationship kind of with your parent organization. So us and the Bucks, like they have their goals for what they want us to do with their draft picks, their two ways, and some of the other guys on our team. And so working in tandem with them to accomplish those goals, as well as trying to help, like you said, all the different types of players we have on our roster. We've got guys that are vets like Justice Winslow, Terrence Davis who were trying to work their way back up. We have those rookies, the Bucks drafted AJ Johnson, Tyler Smith, that have been with us for a little bit this season as well, who have their own goals of trying to develop so that they can help the Bucks here in the future. And then you have just the guys that are just kind of trying to figure out their way in their basketball journey, whether it's to continue to try to fight to get to the next level, whether it's continue just to get better and just kind of see where the next step takes them. It's been super interesting just to see how to work with each type of player like that, how we do kind of player development design for them, as well as take all that importance of player development and try to put them into a basketball team and try to win some games in the G, like you said, in a super competitive league where every night everyone's trying to fight for their minutes, to fight for their scraps on the table so that they can try to go to the next level.
Absolutely, really interesting stuff there. And I want to get quickly more into as well just what your day to day is like right now that you guys are in season as a video coordinator, for a G League team.
Yeah, so I mean, right now, I mean, there's basically two types of days. I have my game days, and then I kind of have my non-game days. And so game days, we have shoot arounds in the morning. We have staff meeting before shoot around, kind of go through some film that we want to show to the guys before shoot around. Then we go right into shoot around. I'll sometimes, depending on who we have, whether it's on the road or at home, I'll jump on the court and be part of scout team to help run through some sets of the team that we're playing. And then I post after the shoot around. I'm in charge of making the schedule, our pregame schedule for all our guys. So when they need to be have their PT, their weights, their on court vitamin times, I arrange all that and send that schedule out after shoot around. Pregame, I get all the documents necessary for our performance team and our head coach, so they have all the documents they need for the game. And then in game, I'm just coding, live coding, which is a little bit easier compared to the college level, just because there's not as much information that needs to be coded to compared to when I was at BYU. But another kind of newer responsibility is I have to figure out when we want to challenge calls, not challenge calls. We only have two challenges in the G League in a game, and so it takes a little trial and error in terms of what's the most optimal time to use a challenge. What type of call do we do an out of bounds call? Do we do a foul? So that's been something that's been an adjustment to trying to figure that out, working with my head coach, Bano, and figuring that out. And then post game is just getting all the film to the Bucks player development guys. If AJ or Tyler or any of the two ways are playing, get them the film so that they can start reviewing it on their end, and then start helping make all the reports for those guys to send out to the Bucks front office and coaching staff the next day. So that's a typical game day. And then non-game days, it could just vary based on practice, different projects, starting to get just catch up on analytic reports, things like that.
Sounds like it keeps you busy.
Yes, very busy.
That's awesome. Now I want to get into more about your journey and the different spots you've been. And I know that really got your start at BYU. But I wanted to just ask you right off the top, because I am not entirely sure where you're originally from.
Yeah, I'm originally from Orange County, California.
Nice, same here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So with that in mind, why BYU? And then once you got to BYU, how did you figure out that you wanted to go this route, and then how did you do it?
Yeah, so I mean, I BYU. My parents went to BYU when they were in school there. I was born while they were in school, so me and my dad, we always watched BYU football games, basketball games. Kind of just been fans all our life, so it's been part of our kind of my identity growing up. So that's kind of what I knew where I want to go for undergrad. So went to undergrad there. Kind of knew junior, senior year I wanted to do sports, and then senior year, kind of later, I knew I wanted to do basketball. And so from there, just try to get any kind of sports experience, basketball experience. Started kind of on the marketing game operation side with BYU Sports, and then the Jazz's G League team when they moved it down from Idaho to Salt Lake. My senior year, got an internship with the Hornets for a summer, doing kind of the event presentation and game ops side, and then ended up going to UCF to get my master's in sports business management, and then also getting my MBA. And that's where I really started kind of getting into just gather as much experience as possible with Net Scouts, Hoop Brothers, networking, connecting with people with the Magic. And that's kind of where my first kind of entry into the kind of the basketball industry started.
Got it. And you mostly worked in the video room. What about the video room, piqued your interest, and what's it been like, work doing it now, working your way up in these different stops?
Yeah, so video, I mean, for me, like math, technology, all that kind of stuff, that kind of comes naturally to me. And so when I first got the video job at BYU, I honestly had no experience with sports code or anything like that, but I was just super confident in myself that I'd be able to figure it out, which luckily I was able to, and be able to start kind of performing at a high level there at BYU and starting to be able to learn all the ins and outs of sports codes and leverage it for all it can be on, especially on the analytics side of things. And so just going from at BYU and then now here with the herd, like video has been something that probably not my favorite thing to do nowadays, now that I've grown and kind of seen where my interests lie in the industry, but it's an important tool that anyone can kind of learn and pick up to kind of break their way into the industry.
Where do your greater interests lie at this point?
For me, it's all kind of on the roster building side. So kind of I like the intersection of the video, the analytics, the intel, character-based stuff, the scouting, video scouting and in-person scouting, and then trying to the salary cap, all that kind of stuff that all intersect together and trying to figure out what's the most optimal team to put together, what players and pieces fit together to try to make a championship team. And kind of that's my ultimate goal is to kind of be a part of putting together a championship roster.
It's really cool, man. GM Keegan, we're gonna be looking out for sure. That's awesome. Um, I mean, being within because you just talked about championship and whatever, and the Bucks obviously for some time now have been a perennial playoff team, and of course won it a few years back in 2021. So what's that? I mean, I gotta imagine it's pretty cool having your first NBA affiliation be with a championship organization. Like, do you see? Is it something as an outsider in the media who wonders about these things, like, and you hear about it with a team like the Bucks or the Miami Heat or the Nuggets or the Spurs or just these teams through the years that that have established this culture. Have you found that that you can sort of tell all the way up and down the organization that, hey, like this is different here. This is a championship org.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see just kind of the culture with the Bucks. Even like I'm not directly in within the organization of the Bucks. I'll probably have more interaction with them after we finish up our G League season, helping them with draft workouts and stuff. But when we were on the road and training camp, we were down at the Bucks facility practicing all that stuff. So be able to interact with some guys there, and I know a couple in the front office that I had some good relationships over the years. And so just seeing kind of the culture, the communication, kind of the respect across the board between the front office, the coaching staff. It's been awesome to see. And I mean, honestly, when I was at training camp in the Bucks facility and you pass the championship trophy in their facility and you just kind of see everything, like it's kind of a pinch yourself. I can't believe that this is kind of where I'm at now after all these years of trying to break into the NBA level.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, that's where I'll go next. Is how did that relationship slash opportunity arise with the herd?
Yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a complicated summer for me. Obviously, with Coach Pope going to Kentucky, and I mean, for me, I thought I was going to end up Kentucky in that summer, but some kind of unfortunate communication and things just didn't work out that way. And so, and then Kevin Young at BYU, he brought his guy from the Suns, and so I ended up kind of being in no man's land at the end of the year. And so my plan was just kind of just do kind of analytics consulting for some college teams, kind of just scrape by during the winter till I can get to the next hiring cycle since unfortunately, I passed down a couple things during the hiring cycle while I was waiting kind of on that Kentucky stuff. And so that was kind of my plan. And then luckily, someone in my network kind of reached out, said if I was interested in this. And so he passed my resume along. And the head coach, Bano, he kind of heard good things from me about me from him, looked at my resume. He just texted me one morning saying if we could talk. And we talked. And I was assuming like this was kind of the start of the interview process to figure this out. And he just said, he gave me the rundown of the position. He's like, all right, well, job's yours. Just let me know if you want it or not. And it's just kind of just super out of the blue, like kind of just like probably one of the most like surreal calls I've had in my professional career with just kind of how easy it came. But I mean, that speaks to the power of kind of having a good network and that network actually like being able to speak highly of you. Because basically he just went off of like he trusted the person, he heard great things, and we had never met, we had never talked before that phone call, and he's just like, I give you a shot, let's do this. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great. I don't even need to ask you a question there about advice because you just gave it there, which is pretty sweet. Um, and you just spoke about those relationships, and I'm sure a lot of those healthy, positive relationships are things that become, a mentor mentee kind of thing. So, who have some of your big mentors been along the way, and I know you mentioned, Mark Pope and just, being Bino now, with the herd, but who have some of those helpful mentors been for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Coach Pope, I mean, he gave me my first chance to industry, so always grateful for that. And he gave me the space to kind of grow, develop, and innovate, which not only helped me grow and develop, but also obviously helped the program and him move on to his next level as well. So super grateful for that. Um, Chris Burgess is one of the assistants at BYU when I first got there. He's been someone that we constantly talk almost on a daily or weekly basis, sometimes just bouncing ideas off each other based on struggles and stuff we're going through in our kind of spaces with him at BYU now again, and then me obviously with the herd. So he's been awesome to have just bounce ideas off of. And then my other two assistants that I worked with, Cody Feger, Keel Fennell, like working with them at BYU was awesome. And kind of just super smart and being able to just talk openly about how we could do to kind of win, being open to having kind of personal conversations and just like getting to know each other on a personal level has been awesome too. Um, and then, like I said, Bano, like super grateful for him and giving the opportunity, having not met me, and now I'm learning from him. Obviously, being a 13-year-old, 13 NBA year vet, just kind of hearing his experience from the league, and obviously he's trying to get his coaching career started, and so being able to help him however I can, but also just kind of learning how he sees the game because it's just so different than anyone I've talked to in my career so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always find it fascinating in situations like yours where the head coach or you have a front office level person or whatever that has that NBA playing experience because as amazing as the college level is or any other level of basketball, there is just nothing like those guys who see the game that way. And the thing that going on a little bit of a rant here, but the thing that just blows me away is always like the speed of the game, even at the G League level, and then above that too. It's just not like anything else. So that's really cool. I mean, just in terms of your different stops that you've had, and this could be from your short time so far in the G League or at BYU. Do you have a memory or a couple memories that you think of just about being proud of anything that you accomplished or a moment with a player or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean at BYU, kind of going into the Big 12, like we had found out we were going to the Big 12 like two years before, so we had like two more seasons in the WCC before that. And so coach brought me into his office and told me like we need you to figure out how BYU is going to be competitive in the Big 12. Obviously, like BYU has its unique restrictions, being a private religious school, has its own unique kind of recruiting pipeline. And so we just had to find some way that we were going to kind of tackle this challenge head on and not just be on the bottom of the conference going forward. And so I did a bunch of research on the history of the Big 12, people that were successful in the Big 12, different types of transfers that were successful from different conferences, and just did a big deep dive into like what's the best way for us to play, what's the most efficient way that we can play that's different in the Big 12 that would somewhat work, and then what kind of personnel could we get to fix that to fit that kind of scheme and that philosophy. And so that was a whole big 2 year kind of project that the summer before we went into the Big 12 presented it, and pretty much almost 95% of it was kind of accepted, and we kind of put into play with some of our current stuff that we were doing in the WCC. And we were picked 13th by the coaches in that year last year, and we ended up finishing fifth. Kind of capstone by a night that I'll never forget was going into Allen Fieldhouse and beating Kansas. Kind of, I think it was the I mean, there's only been like 17 teams or 18 teams up to that point that had gone in there and beat Bill Self. And so, and that game was on the epitome of kind of the philosophy changes that we made going into the season with emphasis on the three and transition play and all that. And so, and then in that game, I gave my only pregame speech I ever gave in my college career, and so that was also super special and kind of doing that and seeing the results afterwards. And so that night's always super special for me at BYU. And then with the herd, I mean, obviously, only been here for 3 months, but a couple weeks ago on the road. We were down 18 to Indiana Mad Ants, and we just weren't playing well and got a little fiery at halftime, trying to kind of get things right. And then came out in the second half, and our guys outscored them 74-44 in the second half, and we ended up winning by 12. And that was a super fun night just to kind of see the potential of us in the second half of how if we just operate at a high level, how we can be.
Absolutely. That's those are some pretty sweet experiences. And that's quite the combo, man, giving your first speech and then seeing the guys go out there and take care of business. That's pretty cool. Turning the page to some of the learnings and the advice that you've picked up from all the stuff that we've talked about. What would your best piece of advice be for somebody that wants to get into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first pieces of advice I got as I was kind of first starting to try to build out my network was kind of never have a gap of basketball experience on your resume. There's obviously so many opportunities and unique experiences to do within the industry, no matter how small they are. They could be volunteering at your local high school or working with an AAU team or writing for a random draft blog or things like that. Like there's just so many different opportunities that just not having a gap on your resume, I think just shows that you are willing to go do whatever it takes to try to break into this industry. And so because of that, like that's how I kind of was kind of really maniacal in terms of trying to find opportunities, especially early in my career of like trying to figure out different ways that I can not only develop myself, but also, like I said, get that unique experience on my resume that might be different to some other candidates when I start applying for other jobs. And sometimes those unique opportunities led to stuff that were a little bigger and continue to help my progress my career.
For others out there that didn't take the, let's call it, conventional path of being the manager for 4 or 5 years and or being a GA after that or whatever, um, what would your best advice be to those people in terms of figuring it out in other ways like you did?
Yeah, I think that kind of the first thing is there's just so much public resources out there in terms of analytics, X's and O's, YouTube breakdowns, mental performance, that I think you just got to take advantage in using them and not only kind of developing yourself and trying just to learn and grow, but also for using it for personal projects in your own portfolio, taking advantage of all that and kind of trying to just I I couldn't count how many times I just did random personal projects on just different questions I had, whether it was doing G League trend reports, figuring out what wins in the G League, to making a complete 50-page Spurs offseason report basically on what they should do in the offseason. And that, I mean, no one was telling me to do that. I just did that and just took it from all the public resources, and it helped me just think of things in different ways, and allowed me to also take that material and show it to some people and get some feedback on it, just continue to develop myself. Like I said, sometimes some of the projects I've done, I mean, for one a job I applied for later in the fall for a G League position, I used some of those G League reports that I created 2 years ago while I was working on it. So I think just having that is super important. And then two is just kind of also taking advantage of kind of this digital networking age that we have. Like you can really connect with almost anyone in this industry through social media, LinkedIn, or even just emails. Like once you figure out the template for an organization's email, you can literally email anyone you want. And I mean, you might strike out 95 out of 100 times, but 5 times you're going to connect with someone, they'll reach back out, and that's the start of a friend of a friendship, of a connection. And then for me, that's what I did for a lot of with the emails, a lot of just email digital cold calling. And then when I got a couple responses, I followed up and basically in-person events like Summer League in Portsmouth, try to solidify those relationships and kind of start my networking from there. So those would probably be like the two biggest points I would for sure focus in on.
What about just in terms of like it's such an interesting business, right? Because there's so many challenges, and it's one of those industries you can go into that is for all of the great things about it, you got to really grind, like you talked about, and really put like everything into it and sacrifice. Um, yeah, being having some holidays open and things like that. So with that in mind, what is something? really important and that maybe isn't the most obvious that you would tell people that want to get into this? Like, hey, you know that you don't need me to tell you the perks, but like this is something else that may not be as obvious that people should know before they really commit to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, like you said, sometimes just in basketball season, the timing of it all could be super difficult. And not only for yourself, but also just like the people in your life. So like for me, it's my wife and kids, my three kids. Like I just went through the stint these last 50 days and I counted it out. Like the last 50 days, I was on the road for 37 of the last 50 days. And so that was super tough on my family. And I just had to try to take advantage of all those 23 days that I was home. And so for the last 60 days, so it's 37 23. And so I think sometimes you really don't think about kind of the sacrifice not only for yourself but also for the people in your life and the normal stuff that you might think of in terms of relationships with family or dating or anything like that or just with your own personal families. And so it's something that you really have to thoughtfully consider and think about if you really do love kind of this work, this game, because it really could take a piece out of you. And you also got to learn how to kind of balance work and life, basketball and life, because if you don't, then it can get really ugly really fast on both ends.
With that in mind, what's your why? What keeps you going through uh persevering and overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I started loving the game kind of in middle school. Kind of obviously growing up in Orange County, seeing Kobe Bryant play, and all that. So like, just I fell in love with the game there. And so just being able to like I said, all like the intersection of all the different things that I love in terms of the scouting part of it, watching and evaluating players, but also the analytics and then the salary cap and the team building. It's just something that for whatever reason in my brain it just is super satisfying and exciting to do. And for me, like it's a job and work, but sometimes it's not, and it's just super fun and it's a passion. And then also, I mean, with my family, like yeah, I mean it's hard sometimes, but also they get to do a lot of cool and fun, unique experiences. With me being in kind of these different positions at when I was at BYU and here that they just wouldn't have if I was just at a normal 9 to 5. And so being able for them to have those cool, unique experiences too, and kind of see the joy that they have of the game also in their lives, and being able to snag like different event tickets at the Pfizer Forum just because I happen to be a Bucks employee, like that just is super cool and exciting for me just to see the joy that they get from kind of the perks from my job.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Keegan, before we say goodbye?
I mean, I think just for everyone out there who's trying to break in, just kind of keep going at it. Like I know it could be super discouraging and tough. I mean, when I was reflecting after I got this job, like I applied for over 8 years trying to break into the NBA, and I gotten 59 no's with a bunch of times getting through the interview process and a couple times getting to the final two or three and thinking that this is the one, and it never happened to be. But I just kept going day by day, trying to just continue to get better and better until I finally broke through. And so, um, I mean, for me, just continue to persevere, continue to fight through it. When you're networking, like network with a purpose. Like, don't just reach out to say, "Hey, I want to get into this. Can I ask you a few questions?" Like, for me, like I get a bunch of that, and I try as best I can to answer back and try to give some good advice. But if I'm reached out to with PDF of some scouting reports from players in the G League, like I'll actually take the time to look through it and give some advice based on that, just because obviously you're trying to put your time into sending me your material. And so just try to get as personalized as you can with networking. And I know it could be super discouraging. Like I said, you can send out 100 emails and get 5 answers back, but you never know that one of those five could be the next step into getting into the industry and getting into kind of this crazy game of basketball.
Wisconsin Herd head video coordinator Keegan Brown. Keegan, thank you so much again for joining Hoops U.
Thanks so much, Blake.